Well, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today for this month's CapsimInbox Pilot Pass webinar, where we're going to be focusing on the version that'll be available to all students as well as professors during the month of April, this month being CapsimInbox Managerial Accounting. Now, my name is Matthew Schell. I'm Capsim's Market Development Manager, where I assist all of our academic as well as corporate authors with creating their very own custom microsimulations via the CapsimInbox authoring platform. And I'm delighted to be joined today with two of my colleagues. First, my colleague Akil Forbes and Business Development Manager here at Capsim, as well as the author of Managerial Accounting, Dr. David McCalman, Assistant Professor of Management at the University of Central Arkansas. Akil, David, how you doing today?
Doing great. Looking forward to this.
Doing great. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, we're happy to have you all on the call as well. And for those of you that this may be your first Pilot Pass webinar, just to quickly state, what we're doing is we're putting a spotlight on each one of the CapsimInbox versions we've created so far within each month within the 2021 year. And of course, what we're doing during that month is providing free access to as many students as you'd like, as often as you'd like during that calendar month, for them to be able to experience the solution and for you to get feedback on their experience. And what we'll do for today's webinar is we'll focus on a few key areas. First, we'll talk about some very top-level information on managerial accounting, specifically around what role the student is playing in the microsim, what the fictional company that they're going to be taking a role in, what skills are we evaluating, and what is the overall scenario, what's the backstory. From there, I'm going to turn over to my colleague Akil, who will then take us through a brief walkthrough of what Inbox is from a top-level view, as well as a brief walkthrough of the participant experience. That way you can see exactly how students would navigate the microsimulation. And then from there, what we'll do is we'll start to get a little bit more in-depth on the scenario as well as the skills we're assessing in this version, and actually bringing David into the conversation, where we'll talk a little bit about what led him to create this microsim and what was the goal, or what was he specifically looking to achieve with the version. And then after that, we've got a surprise for everybody here today. We're going to be giving you a preview of the next microsimulation that David's currently working on, which we'll showcase later on. And then in closing, we'll provide our contact information. So if any of you would like to have instant access to this microsimulation, or if you'd like to connect with any of us, happy to do so. And one final note, if you have any questions during today's presentation, please feel free to submit them in the chat, and we'll respond to those at the end of the call in a brief Q&A session. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So what exactly is CapsimInbox Managerial Accounting? Well, this is one of our microsimulations that we originally released right at the end of 2019, with Dr. McCalman being one of our initial authors to work within the platform. And in this particular microsimulation, students are going to be taking the role of a senior accountant at a consulting firm, particularly at the fictional consulting company called Harrison & Hewitt. This firm particularly focuses on asset evaluation as well as mergers and acquisitions. And really one of the overarching themes of this simulation is going to be students offering strategic solutions to different fictional clients of Harrison & Hewitt. And throughout the exercise, they're going to really focus on 4 clients in particular. But what does the format look like within managerial accounting? Well, we've actually split this simulation into 2 smaller sections. A good way to think of this section is almost like a checkpoint, if you will, where students will be able to enter the first section, complete all of the different stimuli that they're going to be encountering in that simulation. Then they could take a break and then go through the next section later, or in sequence, however you like it structured within your course. And I would say on average that each section takes roughly 15 to 20 minutes to complete. Now, as far as the skills that we're looking to assess and measure within this exercise, what's unique about managerial accounting is it's one of our versions that's essentially a hybrid of both soft skill concepts along with hard skills, or more business knowledge checks in that regard. So we focus on soft skill areas like how effective they can go about making decisions in a managerial role, and also how effective is their business communication when talking to both internal and external stakeholders. But at the same time, we're looking to assess their knowledge of key managerial accounting concepts as well, particularly around financial statement analysis, budgeting, and cost concepts, to name a few areas. And the overall scenario that the student's going to be playing through is that Harrison Hewitt has a client that is looking to acquire another larger company. And what the students are going to have to do is they're going to have to look into this company's financial health, their costs, and understand the profitability of their various product lines in order to provide the client that's looking to acquire them with all the information and insight they need to make a well-informed decision. So really, we're trying to have them really take an in-depth look and analyze different business operations, particularly to try to make financial insights, and many of them relating to profitability as well. But now that we've kind of covered the main content within managerial accounting, I'd like to hand it over to my colleague Akil, who will start off by first giving us kind of a 30,000-foot view on what CapsimInbox is as a platform before we jump into a brief tour of the participant experience. Akil?
Thank you, Matt. So yes, what is CapsimInbox and how has it been used? So CapsimInbox really is a self-driven platform where we're putting the participants in a professional role. For each iteration, it's a different professional role and a different storyline, different company that they're working for, and really measuring particular skills. As we mentioned earlier, these could be soft skills or hard skills or qualitative skills, or quantitative skills, in a measurement of how they react or answer these particular emails that show up in their inbox. Many programs have used this as a replacement of a case study or a quick homework assignment for the students to go through, or as a pre and post test to measure growth over time. And at the end of this 45-minute experience, or the experience the participants / students go through, they also will be walked through a self-driven, independent or individual development plan. So self-driven remediation plan. So from here, we'll take a look at what this platform looks like by looking at an example. This is a shell of our general management versions, and this is exactly what the student dashboard would look like. So initially, they're going to click that green button that says Take Assessment and be taken to a welcome page, and their experience is actually going to follow the ribbon at the top of the screen. So they're going to see the welcome page, self-assessment, role, rehearsal, and then jump into the inbox itself. So on this welcome page, they're going to get a high-level view of what's to come by watching this quick, short minute-and-a-half video, and then move on to the self-assessment. Self-assessment here will list all of the skills that this particular version of Inbox are measuring, and really give the participants the opportunity to rate themselves of like, okay, where do I feel like I stand now with this particular skill? And I'll pull that cursor across. This is a 0 to 100 scale, so very quick and easy self-assessment. And if they needed some more context on what a particular skill is, they'd click on that information button that we're highlighting at the moment. But from the self-assessment, they'll move on to the next screen, which is getting more content or context of their role, the role that they will be playing in this professional setting. So in this example, these participants are going to be acting as a director of sales and operations for a tooling company. So getting some more information of, okay, who reports to me, who do I report to, some more content on the company that I'm working for, their core values, maybe an org chart if I were to scroll down, just some more information for them to take in before jumping into the actual assessment. From here, this is a quick rehearsal, just illustrating to the participants of how they're going to take in information and react to it, or answer a question, answer an email. So this is just an example of what the dashboard is going to look like before we put them into the actual assessment that measures their skills. And then from here, they'll move on and jump into the actual inbox, which will be loaded with a number of emails directed at the participants directly. They'll be able to read the content of the email and choose the best response below. They'll also have access to a file drive over to the left where they can reference certain documents, maybe an org chart is over there while they're answering emails, and sort of going through these scenarios. They'll also be hit with chats in some instances from colleagues, asking them in some cases pertinent questions. In other cases, this will serve as a distractor. but this is also going to show up for the students. So after they finish replying to all of the emails and chats, they will immediately exit the inbox and be able to receive feedback. And the feedback that they're going to receive is going to drill down. It's going to start wide and drill down. So initially, they're going to get a percentile of how they did measured against everybody else that went through this assessment. Below that, they'll have a development index, as well as a self-awareness score. But most importantly, they're going to get a skill gap window, really reminding them where they put themselves in the self-assessment and where the inbox put them with this particular skill based on their responses. So in some cases, this will be a self-esteem builder. So if we're looking at this closely, we can see that, okay, initially this participant put themselves at a 10 in terms of organizing, but the inbox has them at a 50. Hey, that's great. In other instances, this is going to illustrate a skill gap or that there's room for improvement in this particular skill. And that's where many assessments or platforms will lead the students of you're strong in these areas and these skills, and there's room for improvement in these other skills. Where CapsimInbox likes to take it a step further and walk them through an individual development plan, which again is going to start with a welcome video, sort of welcoming them to what's to come. Below that, they're going to get a list of developmental tactics as well as their skill scores, also listed by development need. So they can choose to go ahead and improve on some of these scores. The first thing that's going to happen when they click improve, they will see our definition of that particular skill. And below it, they're going to see developmental tactics, exercises they can pick and choose from to implement into the day-to-day life to build on this skill and walk them through setting a goal, a SMART goal, a timeline to building this skill. They can go back and do that for the other skills listed in this assessment and fleshing out their individual development plan. And this is a plan, development plan that they can actually download and walk away with as a part of their self-development journey. So that's what the participants will walk away with. We're going to jump over to what the instructor will actually have access to in terms of data. So they will have an overall percentile of how their students did, listed by skill scores as well. And then they can also see the individual scores of each student. The overall score, how much time did they take to complete this activity, whether or not they completed an individual development plan, and be able to actually view that development plan. And all of this data is available to be exported to a CSV or Excel file if you needed it for accreditation purposes, internal benchmarking, really building out or fleshing out the longitudinal data to show maybe the students' individual growth or the program's growth as a whole. But that is, in a nutshell, the CapsimInbox platform experience. At this point, I can turn it back over to you, Matt.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that detailed walkthrough, Akil. Very much appreciated. And we've actually gotten a lot of great feedback on the CapsimInbox platform for both professors and students alike. On the professor side, this is incredibly easy to implement. In fact, it's as easy as going about the same sort of bulk registration methods that you may be familiar with if you use some of our group-based simulations. Or if you're looking for an even easier way of implementing it, it's as simple as sharing a hyperlink in your syllabus or via email with your students. That way they can immediately enter the exercise. So very low on the admin burden from the professor side, and you kind of get to watch as the results come in as students complete it and have all of the metrics that Akil was describing. And then also from the student side, we get a lot of positive feedback from students going through these because there is a certain degree of gamification, of course, but outside of that, it's an incredibly engaging exercise and familiar as well. You know, you're going to be constantly kind of peppered with different emails and instant messages that some may be more urgent than others, some may be more time sensitive than others. But the overall format of being a simulated email environment really lends itself to increased amount of engagement from students because it's something they use on a day-to-day basis, something they can instantly relate to. And in fact, outside of just some of our clients that are currently using CapsimInbox, we've actually gotten a lot of good responses from the larger academic and even the corporate community out there as well, with some key associations. I'm very happy to say that over the course of 2020, the CapsimInbox platform, and particularly managerial accounting being a key focus for our first set of versions, it helped us with the acquiring the 4 different awards you see on screen here. Everything from the EdTech Cool Tool Awards, from the product or service that's setting a trend, to the winner of the Professional Skills Solution category. And we had a fantastic surprise at the end of 2020, where the CapsimInbox platform was specifically cited as a gold medal winner of the Brandon Hall Group Awards for Best Advance in Gaming or Simulation Technology. And then taking a quick aside, the actual authoring platform itself that David utilized to create this managerial accounting simulation was actually selected for the gold medal in the Best Advanced in Content Authoring Technology. So if any of you out there have any ideas on how you'd like to create your own microsimulation, maybe you've made a case study in the past that you'd really like to make experiential, feel free to let us know, and we'd be happy to share best practices on how you can achieve that. It's as simple as creating a separate account to go onto the authoring platform, and you could immediately start creating your own solution. But now that we've covered kind of more general CapsimInbox and the platform, what I'd like to do now is turn the spotlight to David and provide a little bit of a background on how I came to work with Dr. McCalman in 2019, and a little bit about his own history in academia. So David, I'm proud to say, was one of our very first authors on the CapsimInbox authoring platform. We had originally connected in March of 2019, and instantly he had a drive to create a solution around managerial accounting. Now, David, of course, is the Assistant Professor of Management at the College of Business at the University of Central Arkansas, and he has over 31 years of experience teaching at both the undergrad as well as the graduate level and even postgraduate level. And his current focus at UCA at this time is particularly around their capstone course for their undergrad business program, Managing Policy and Strategy, with a key emphasis on, you named it, accounting and finance for managers. Now, outside of just his instruction with students, he also plays a very substantial role in the administration at UCA as well, where he's a member of the MBA Advisory Board. And particularly for the College of Business, he also sits on the Strategic Planning Committee and the Curriculum Assessment Committee. So I think it's safe to say that David really knows a good assessment when he sees one, and I'm glad to hear that he thought that Inbox would be a good vehicle for the ideas that he had. We also include a little bit of information on his education, where he received his bachelor's and master's originally from the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, and then later on, his Master of Business and PhD in International Business and Strategic Management over at Indiana University. And now what I'd like to do is bring David into the conversation as we talk a little bit more about the scenario itself, the skills assessed, and then we'll actually get a little bit more insight from David on the scenario. And I'll ask him a few questions about his kind of ambition and drive to create such a solution. Sound good, David?
Sounds good. Thanks, Matt.
Excellent. So again, just to reiterate, the role that the student will be taking within managerial accounting is going to be the role of a senior accountant at that consulting firm, Harrison and Hewitt, and provide a variety of different services for some fictional clients, 4 in particular, around asset valuation and acquisitions. And the main skill categories, again, that we're going to focus on assessing for students is going to be managerial decision-making, cost concepts, financial analysis, budgeting, and business communication. But from there, David, is there anything in particular you'd like to add to the scenario to start?
Well, I'd like to begin by saying that I've been a user of Capsim products for over a decade now, in particular Capsim Capstone and CompXM, as well as the Global DNA simulation for an international management course. And a few years back at another institution, a colleague of mine received a cyber grant from the federal government of about $1 million, with which he was to assess and evaluate different pedagogical tools, including simulations. And we looked at quite a lot of them, including international accounting simulations, stock market games, financial negotiation simulations, a couple of international operations, 2 or 3 international ops simulations. And the reason I bring this up is that I've seen quite a lot that's out there. And that's what drew me initially to Capsim in general. And then I found out about this microsimulation, CapsimInbox, as a platform for crafting microsimulations that were to be experiential and in which the participant is a role player. Well, I thought that was ideal for what I was looking for, actually. I do teach the capstone course for our College of Business, which is required for all majors, not just finance, not just accounting, but for all majors. And, you know, I've noticed sometimes a sort of a lack of bridge that students have received. Now, they take my course on the way out of their program. It's typically the last semester that they're here. And there's a sort of a lack of connection at times between what they've picked up in their previous accounting courses and then the ability to actually apply it, or at least to think in terms of real world applications. So I thought the CapsimInbox platform was just ideal for that. It's been used. I was very impressed at some of the ones that I've seen for soft skills in the past that have been developed, but I thought, what about accounting? And so what I looked for was creating breadth, first of all, sort of a broad microsimulation within just the short span of time, typically an hour or less. But I wanted to look at some of the key ingredients of, say, junior, senior level accounting expertise and competence. So breadth was what I was looking for, and the inbox was a really good tool for getting across that breadth in a very short span of time. And then the second thing I was looking for was emphasis on managerial accounting. So I'm thinking not only in terms of such things as financial statements and financial ratio analysis and that sort of thing, you know, cost accounting types of skills, but also moving toward the softer ones, such as in decision-making criteria and methods, and even communication. And so the student is in the driver's seat. The student is suddenly a senior accountant at this consulting firm. And the reason I chose that was because a consulting firm would not be tied to just one business scenario or one a business situation. He does have different clients, so I was able to, you know, provide services. I, the participant, was able to provide services for, you know, a large publicly traded healthcare organization, and at the same time a sort of a small ski resort business in the Rockies. And so that way the participant is dealing with these emails and these instant messages. The participant even has an intern fresh out of college working alongside. And as Matt and Akil pointed out earlier, you're dealing with not only the actual competencies, but now and then you'll get a sort of a tangential email, kind of like in real life, you know, dealing with something that's just a lot less important or not necessarily business, just flying by. And the participant is going to have to do some fairly rapid prioritization of what he or she is going to deal with and how they're going to deal with it. So I really fell in love with this platform.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that description of the scenario and kind of the thought process of bringing you to the CapsimInbox platform, David. You had mentioned, you know, as part of that there was kind of two kind of central goals or needs you were looking to address here, or at least you know, challenges you were looking to resolve. Number one being the practical application of skills. So essentially, you know, crossing that knowing doing gap, if you will. But then also you had mentioned that you wanted to also create something specifically for managerial accounting. So I guess my question to you would be, was there kind of a lack of managerial accounting related simulation tools out there to be found? And were there any other goals you had in mind when creating this?
Oh yes, well, again, the role-playing aspect really got my attention. Again, that sort of thing is typically used for other types of business competencies, not so much with accounting. Yes, I have seen some, and I have looked over and played some of the options out there, but they had various disadvantages. One thing I haven't mentioned much is the ease of use. there is almost no front-end loading for getting a CapsimInbox up and running. Several months ago, I piloted this in a couple of my classes, and the students were just able to pick it up and run with it, as compared to some other simulations that are out there with very, very little intervention on my part. It was self-explanatory. You know, in one class period, they were off to the races. And then the feedback provided for them without my necessarily, you know, providing additional feedback. I mean, they learn immediately or almost immediately how they've done on it. So I like that element too. One doesn't have to open, you know, sheet after sheet or spreadsheet after spreadsheet to say, well, you seem to have gotten lost at this point or something along those lines. So I like the ease of use of it.
Excellent. And particularly around, you had mentioned that the students, you know, really enjoy the experience, and particularly they liked having that kind of instantaneous feedback. David, is there any other benefits you see that directly, you know, anything that directly benefits either students or professors with this particular type of application?
Well, it's easy to use, again, from the student's perspective. It's also hands down the simplest platform that I've seen for any kind of simulation I can think of out there, for the professor as well. And the professor gets the feedback, the professor gets the assessment. Now it's up to the instructor to turn that into a grade, and we don't have a one-size-fits-all, you know, cookie cutter you know, way of saying, well, this student got a B+ or anything like that. So the weighting of it, WEIGHTING, and the, you know, translation of the data into a grade is entirely up to the instructor. The instructor is able to customize, if you will, as needed.
Excellent. And then one final question for you, David, because I'm sure this is on a lot of people's minds. I'm sure they have some ideas themselves, but is there any particular courses that you think that managerial accounting would be best suited for, either at the undergrad or the graduate level within the College of Business or not?
Sure, absolutely. What I was looking for is pretty much something on the junior to senior undergrad level for the most part. If a student were to take it, say, as a pre-test for an intro to accounting course, that would probably be a very, very high bar to clear for that student. I think of it as, you know, one of the potential uses is as a pre-test and post-test. So in, say, a junior or senior level managerial accounting kind of course, it could be used at the beginning of the semester, in which, again, I would think most of the students would probably struggle with at least some parts of this, but maybe a post-test at the end of the semester as well, and then progress can be gauged. But then, you know, I applied it in a capstone management course as well, because again, I'm dealing with students that are dealing with cases or another simulation, and they don't necessarily make that bridge. And so I think it's perfectly suitable for any type of capstone course in a business school. Now on the graduate level, I could see it as a pre-MBA sort of course. The pre-MBA classes are provided often at a lot of universities for students that have an undergrad, say, in something else, and they want to pursue an MBA, for example, and so they're, you know, different universities have different ways of dealing with that, but taking a student, say, with an engineering background or some other kind of background, that could be used in a pre-MBA course, or even actually in an MBA accounting course.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that detailed synopsis of not just the version, but, you know, applications and how this could be utilized, you know, within the classroom, David. Very much appreciated there. At this time, everybody, if there's any particular questions that you'd like to ask David specifically, feel free to enter them in the chat, and we'll go ahead and respond to those very shortly here. But what we'd like to do at this time is we'd actually like to give you a firsthand preview of what David's working on at this moment as a nice complementary experience for managerial accounting. So we're very happy to announce that David and Capsim are currently in the process of creating CapsimInbox Financial Management, which as noted will be more of a complementary simulation that could be used as a standalone or in sequence with managerial accounting, either before or after each one's being implemented. And this actually is very exciting for us because it comes with a new first for us here at Capsim, where David's actually designing CapsimInbox Financial Management to have a shared universe. So essentially the same characters, the same consulting company, Harrison Hewitt, will be consistent between these two exercises. Now, of course, the student role will change to be something a little bit more financially driven, of course. But if a student were to say go through managerial accounting and then maybe a week or two later go through financial management as part of the same course, or maybe even two separate courses, they're going to have that storyline going between the two, so it keeps consistent for them, since these classes are usually brought together in unison. Now, as far as the skills that we're particularly looking to assess in this version, we've already got a couple that we're making paramount. Those being capital budgeting, valuation, long-term finance concepts, working capital management, as well as the time value of money, just to name a few for now. And in terms of applications, as David noted for managerial accounting, we are kind of aiming this at more the upper undergraduate level and for graduate level applications. And if any of you are interested when we're going to be releasing this, well, we're actively working on it at this moment. So we're going to be tentatively set to release this prior to the fall 2021 semester. So if you'd like to try it during that time, feel free to let us know. Happy to give you more information there. And in fact, as we do with all CapsimInbox versions created, we always like to open this up to both free pilots, just as we're doing with the pilot pass for managerial accounting. That way we can get student feedback on the experience. But also, if you yourselves would like to serve as a subject matter expert for us here at Capsim, we'd be happy to give you full access to go through this, and you can provide your own qualitative feedback to both of Capsim and David. That way we can improve this even further ahead of its formal launch. So very exciting times ahead, and stay on the lookout for that. But now in closing, before we get to the Q&A session here, I just wanted to, of course, thank you all for your time for joining today's webinar. If you are interested in getting in contact with myself, Akil, or Dr. McCalman, we do have our information there on the right side of the screen. And this will allow you to either connect with Akil for a one-on-one demonstration of the platform, if you have some more particular questions you'd like to ask. We will also providing you with a PDF version of this deck shortly after today's presentation. That way you can use the hyperlink you see on screen to make your very own student account and start going through the experience to see if it's a good fit for your course. Of course, as part of the pilot pass, you'll be able to pilot this with any of your students during the month of April. And if you should be interested in, again, learning either just more about financial management as we continue to develop it, or would like to either pilot or serve as a subject matter expert, feel free to let us know. And in fact, you could submit any your information through the hyperlink on the bottom of the page here, which will give you more information on the pilot pass and will allow one of us to reach out to you directly. So with that, I'll go ahead and take just a few moments here if anybody would like to submit any questions into the chat, and then we'll have a brief Q&A session. So I do see we have some here already, so we can get started here pretty quick, but to give everybody just another moment. Okay. So David, I think we have a little bit of an extension of what you were talking about in the scenario portion. How do I exactly use this in my class? And as a bit of an extension of that, where would I put this in the semester specifically? Would you like to speak to that?
Sure. Again, this probably takes about an hour at the most, typically a little bit less. So this is perfectly suitable for those doing real-time or synchronous classes. Even if they're online, they can do it synchronously, within one class period. And as for when in the semester, I would think it would be good perhaps around the midterm if it were, say, an accounting course, or even at the end, not as a final exam, but as a portion of the final cumulative kind of assessment of the student. It's geared for breadth. And then again, I like the idea of a pre-test and post-test, perhaps without a grade attached for students, say in the first week of a semester, but then take it then and then again at the end of the semester and see what's happened. And that way you'll generate actionable data.
Excellent. And then David, another question we have, how would I grade this? I know you hit on this a little bit, but any particular methods you think are effective for actually assigning a empirical score to this kind of exercise, for instance?
Well, depending, the instructor will have data for each of the skill sets. So if they want to emphasize or give extra weight to one portion, they can. Akil mentioned earlier that this can take the place or be seen as a sort of a proxy case. So the sort of grade level or grade weighting that an instructor would use for a case might well be appropriate with this.
Excellent. And then, okay, so we got a pretty unique question here, David. What can you tell me about this solution from an accreditation perspective?
Oh, yes. Well, accreditation is something that I've been through a number of times, and our school is AACSB accredited, and we just went through the second iteration since I've been here. And I have in my office here the guidebook for AACSB accreditation for 2020 and 2021. And a number of participants today will probably recognize these three words: innovation, engagement, and impact. Those are three of the key concepts that accreditation is based on these days from AACSB. And that's the beautiful thing about the Inbox solution is, well, obviously, as far as innovation goes, you have the Brandon Hall Awards and EdTech Awards. Obviously, it's novel and virtually unique out there. So it certainly fits the innovation aspect. As for engagement, obviously, experiential exercises are in the ascendant these days, as well as role playing. So yeah, in fact, from the feedback I got from students when we piloted it here, I had students that said, I don't even like accounting, but I liked this exercise. So it ticks the box on engagement. And then in terms of impact, yes, I think it obviously has that going for it as well. We provide the developmental tactics and an assessment that students can take away and participants can use in the future going forward. So, from an accreditation standpoint, that is actually one of the attractive elements of this. And, for those who adopt, it does provide their School of Business or College of Business something that they can take as part of their portfolio of assurance of learning metrics and just general accreditation metrics that they can take with them.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that response as well, David. I think we have 2 or 3 more questions, 2 more content-related questions that I can send your way, and then we have one around debriefing that we can respond to as well. We have a question from the audience, David, talking about the actual skills that we're assessing outside of soft skills. What specifically on the managerial accounting topics does the simulation cover? A little bit more granular.
Oh, sure. Well, we deal with, among other things, financial statements and financial ratio analysis. So students are provided as they go along, income statements and balance sheets as appropriate for whichever client that the participant is dealing with. And there are going to be, some exercises using computation. There are decision-making exercises such as deciding among competing net present value or payback periods, that sort of thing.
Excellent. And then another more specific content-related question, David. Does this or the forthcoming module on financial management cover standard cost variances and flexible budget variances?
The upcoming financial inbox will be including those as part of the experience.
Excellent. And then a question around debriefing specifically, David, because it is more of a self-directed kind of, kind of encapsulated experience for the student, we had a question around debriefing specifically. To provide just some initial context to everybody, at no point do we actually provide the students with the most effective or the correct answer in the exercise directly, because we like to always make it a post-discussion debrief as one of the more optimal ways of discussing with the students. What kind of scenarios did you encounter? How did you approach them? What would you do differently, basically? So I guess, David, to your point, do you have any insights as to how debriefing could be effective, let's say immediately post-exercise with students?
Immediately post-exercise, beyond what the inbox itself provides, is I can have an immediate grasp of general weak spots, or certain elements or skill sets that maybe students are good on, maybe some skill sets where they evidently need more work. And so I can shape the debrief and perhaps even the rest of the semester according to their apparent needs.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that response, David. And I'd like to give everybody one final chance. If you have any other questions you'd like to submit, we'd be happy to address those now. But in the meantime, David, I've actually got a question for you.
Sure.
If you wanted everybody in today's webinar to take away one thing, what would that exactly be?
Value added.
Value added. Short, sweet, and to the point. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining today's webinar. Dr. McCalman, of course, thank you for participating today, as well as Akil throughout today's webinar. Again, if any of you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to contact any of us via our emails on screen, and we'll be sending this deck out very shortly for you all to go through as well. So thanks again for your time, and have a great day.